So tonight, ladies, we don't have gents. Tonight, ladies, we're going to make Suky. Now, let's just have a quick look, see what's on the desk. So I've got this all laid out so we can have a little look-see. Now, Suky was kind of born when we had a look some time ago now at a picture that I'd commandeered, and I hope that's light enough for you to see, that I commandeered from somewhere where it was kind of like borrow work with Sashko. Now, borrow work is the mending of clothing, Japanese mainly. Well, actually, it's all Japanese. And actually, the Japanese people that mended their clothes using the borrow technique were very ashamed of the fact that they had to mend their clothing going out into the fields and working so hard as they do and did. And the story was that they were pretty ashamed that they had to patch all their clothing, that they couldn't afford to buy new clothing. But born from that, of course, was this wonderful, fabulous technique of layering up of patches. So initially, of course, it was for clothing and possibly, I suppose, bags and things like that, anything that was going to be worn out. And they would find old pieces of cloth that were no good to anybody else, and they would patch. And then they would use the Sashko stitch, which you can see here, to actually stitch those layers together. Now, I have done mine raw edge. You can see it's raw edge, and I love raw edge. I love seeing all this fraying. It just appeals to me. And the little patch that's at the back, which I'll see if I can find a picture of, here we go, is also frayed to complement the front. And that's the patch that we cover the hole up with. We'll get there eventually. So, but you can obviously, if you want to, cut your pattern pieces a 1/4 inch bigger and turn them under. Bye bye, Barbara, she's got to go. Bye bye. Just got visitors, how dare they? Yes, you can cut your patches a 1/4 inch bigger, press them under with your iron, and do your Sashko stitch over the top, or do your running stitch. Let's keep it simple, using your running stitch over the top. And assuming you're going to catch that sort of edge, if you like, then you don't need to slip stitch the edges. You would still do a running stitch on the folded edge, just a wee bit in, so it sort of catches that folded edge down. So I would say to you is decide what sort of look you want. If you want this to be really super neat, then obviously cut your patches a 1/4 inch bigger, press them all under and have them ready to go. Or cut them as per the pattern. So this is pattern piece number 1, and you're going to cut it right on the line, and you're going to have it so it frays, which, as I said, I particularly like, but everybody's different, aren't they? So and the other thing you can do is that you could put little glue dots on the back of this and glue all those pieces in place, and then stitch just the once. Okay, so you're gonna, I'll talk about this as I go along, because there's different ways of you tackling this. Even though this is a little project, there could be a lot of thought go into it. So for instance, on this top patch, I decided to go up, and some of it I decided to go across. Now, traditionally, you'd be using probably plain fabrics, plain linen-y, denim-y, sort of, it's like the Japanese colour, isn't it, the navy blue, and I figured that would be a little bit austere, so I thought using some of our gorgeous Makawa fabrics, would be just so pretty. But the one that I'm going to do tonight is actually all denim. So I just happened to visit the denim lady at a quilting fair not so long ago, and I just got a ton of denim from her. Oh, that's the plain one. Which one's that then? Oh yes, spotty. So we've got, I don't know if you can see that. The lighting in here is not very good, I feel. Anyway, so each one is, that one is a plain, but the rest are patterned, and that's just is modern, isn't it? It keeps it trendy. So the first thing you're going to do is cut yourself a front and a back. Okay, so you can put the back to one side. Let's just put that away so we don't get confused. And we've got the front, and we're going to patch on top of this. Now, if we follow the pattern here, everything is labelled, so it's easy to actually put this down onto your fabric as we go. Right, the other thing is I'm using lovely sharp scissors, but also I've got these Japanese snips, which are just so gorgeous. I can hardly bear to use them because they're so gorgeous, and I keep them in their little case so they're nice and safe. They are incredibly sharp, and I did actually get these from Japan. I didn't go to Japan, but these are authentic, which is fabulous, and so I rarely use them, but they're a little treasure. Now, you can get Sashko needles, and by all means go and get some Sashko needles, but actually I find these to be perfectly fine. The Gold Eye Embroidery Needles by Clover, sizes 3 to 9, and I think I've picked out a size 4. I'm not too sure because there's a gap there as well, and I'm sure I've only had one out of here, but anyway, so I think I've picked out a size 4, which is a fairly large eye, because I'm using traditional Sashko thread in cream. You can get all sorts of colours. Oh my goodness me, the world is your oyster. So I'm going to show you how to actually open one of these up. Believe me, there is a technique to this. So that's the ones I use, and you decide for yourself whether that suits you. So just to make it a little bit more interesting, I'll come up for air. So I'll just show you real quick. Now I do just get my Sashko threads from Amazon. They are traditional Japanese threads. They're all written in you won't be able to see it, but it's written in Japanese. That might be a little bit clearer, because I think it's a little bit important to keep to that. But of course you could use perlé cotton, or embroidery thread. It's entirely up to you. Don't get anything special until you think this is something that you'd like to do. I don't know if you've ever seen any of my work that I've done using Sashko thread, but I absolutely love doing this, and I think it's because it's just slow, mindful stitching, isn't it? There's no stress to it. So you're going to take off the little tube, and you're going to open this up. Now please be careful when you do this, because oh, here comes Millie, because it is a very long skein of, hello Millie, where are you? Down here. Here, where are you? Ah, there's a good, oh, you're all wet. Ugh, yuck. Right, I won't stroke you, Millie, because you're all wet. I know, and it's right, sorry about that. So yes, so be careful when you open this up, because it is one long skein. Okay, it's in the round. Okay, and somewhere you'll find that there's a little knot of the fibres have been knotted together. Now I just snip that. You can, I suppose you can undo it. I've never undone it, but you can undo it, and just take that away. Let's just give that a snip. That's it. So we because I've snipped it now, I've got two short ends and what we cut ends. Now actually all you're going to do is literally, I'm serious here, just get your scissors and cut it in half. Now this is not like embroidery. If you were doing embroidery, you'd cut that again here, and that would be about the right length for embroidery. This isn't embroidery, this is something different. So you keep it on that length, that's the length you want. So you're going to take one piece of this, and it's gorgeous, beautiful quality. I'm pretty sure it's cotton thread. I've never questioned it, but it's just beautiful quality. It would dye beautifully, a bit like Swan Lake. No, not like Swan Lake. So you would just pick up one strand, okay, and that's what you would use. Now it's quite a long piece, But when you consider that you're just in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, you will soon use this long piece up. And like I say, unless you knot it. And like I say, it's not like embroidery where you're doing delicate work. You're literally doing a running stitch. Now, don't get too hung up about your running stitches. There's so many rules and regs with Sashko about the stitches and the distance between the stitches and all of that. So please, unless you're very interested in it, just enjoy the process of doing a running stitch. And I might just put that to one side for the moment. It's only a little knot. I will undo it. So so that was all. Let's see, is there any question? Oh, bye, Jackie. Let's have a look, see if we've done anything else about the question of Diana loves raw edge as well. So I think as long as there's no questions, because if there is a question about anything, please ask and then we can answer it now, and those lovely guys watching later can then have an answer to perhaps a question that they may have in their heads. So if we go back onto the overhead again, what we need to do is we need the instructions to hand, because we need to have a look at how this is laid out. Okay, so number one piece goes along here, and I've kept mine all intact, so this is number one piece. Now I'm going to, right, okay, so let's just concentrate on what we're talking about. Now you could, if you wanted to, you could now stitch the whole thing down. Okay, just go up and down, up and down. Don't worry about spacing, just enjoy the process of stitching that. Okay, so you could stitch that down as is. All right, and so she's concentrating. You can always watch it later, Anne, you know what we like. So that's number one. So you could put a few little glue dots down, you could pin that, whatever you feel comfortable with. That's your first piece. And then if we move on, we can look at two. So two is next in my heap, which is this one here, and I think that's the plain piece. And again, that can go, I think we got it so it goes from corner to sort of not quite the corner. So don't forget, traditionally we would probably only be using one patch to mend a worn area or a torn area, but over a period of many months, the poor Japanese workers would end up with patches on patches on patches, and that's where borrow work comes from. So number three is this one here, and I've obviously got it here, and then again you can just place it. Denim is a bit tricky actually, because it tends to sort of curl, so if you use denim then just be aware that when you press it, it might curl at the edges. And again, you could perhaps glue this down, pin it, and like I say, if you stitch that one, you could then just stitch this one. Okay, but I'm going to cheat tonight, so I'm going to do the cheats way. And then if we go on to here, number four is this one here, and again, let's just peel that away. I've got anchors, so it's completely not Japanese. And I'm covering up my original pieces because, of course, you know, that's what they would have done. They would have patched over a patch over a patch, and that's how they would build it up. And if that hasn't quite, you see, that hasn't quite covered it, I can just move this along a wee bit, because you've got to cover it. It's all about making the clothing or whatever it is really strong. And then number five is the one straight down the middle, or in the middle, I should say. And I've got a lovely, sparkly, almost sunshine there, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. So if we bring in the one that I made, you can see how all those layers have blended together almost. You can see this, obviously this one in the middle, but really when you start to look, you'd have to look to see the patches because they're all been stitched down. Now I did this with my Sashko machine, which is just the most wonderful thing ever. You don't need one. It's just I happen to treated myself, and my mum has it at the moment. She's making herself a jacket, but I don't think she's using the machine. I think she's doing it by hand. But anyway, so there's my thread ready to do some stitching with, but you can see how that looks. And then if we turn it over, we've got the patch on the back, and the patch on the back is covering the opening that I make with my scissors to stuff it, because I do like to stitch all the way around and then cut here and turn through and then stuff. You get a really nice rectangle there, if you like, whatever it is. You get a nice shape. You don't have a bit where you've had to machine it closed or hand stitch it closed, and it's a far easier thing to do as long as it suits you to do that. So there's our piece of patch, if you like. So all I'm going to do is I'm literally going to pin this, try and keep these all in place. I don't think it would be too difficult. I think it would be easier if you're you know, you're sitting on the sofa with a cup of tea and you're enjoying a bit of TV or something, and you can just sort of stitch these by hand as you go. So that, I think I've probably caught all the layers. I think that one is caught under there, but we'll see. We'll see how we get on. Now, I shall be doing a bit of hand stitch. Now, it could be that I'll get to a point where you know, there's a limit. Now look, I'm going to put a knot in. They're not at all bothered about hiding knots. Well, yeah, they do hide it. They go inside, but it's okay to knot your thread, okay? Whereas, and there are special Sashko knots, can you believe? I'm going to do a double one just to make sure it doesn't pull through. So if you're interested, find out about that by all means, but let's keep it simple. It's just a simple knot. And you can see with just doubling up my threads, I've threaded that through my needle, it makes a nice decent length. So all you're going to do now, I'm going to do this as quick as I possibly can, and I'm going to start a little way out because we're going to have we're not going to have a raw edge. We're going to have a nice neat edge. We're going to turn through. So if you do start a 1/4 of an inch in, nothing is lost. Now I'm having to do this at a very funny angle. I say that's my disclaimer. But you would do fairly small stitches. This is probably too thick a needle, I'll be honest with you. You do fairly small stitches, and you probably get a lot of stitches on your needle before you actually pull through. So I'm trying to do this so you can see better than me. This is a little bit away from me, but you probably do maybe that many. Now I'm doing fairly big stitches. It makes no difference. I don't want you to get hung up about that. But this is going to be a really nice little project that you can sit and do and enjoy, just a bit of hand stitching. And so you can see already that we've done a wee bit, but really we could go a lot faster and get up more stitches on our needle. And especially if you've got this directly in front of you, not like me with my arms stretched right out, you'll get on a lot better. And like I say, you could have a look at getting some Sashko needles. It does make a difference. They're designed obviously to do this sort of work. They're a lot longer, which means you'd get a lot more stitches on your needle before you pull your needle through. But they are quite, some of them are quite thick, and I don't know the reason why that is. I don't know the history of the Sashko needle, other than they are quite long, especially for getting as many threads on the needle as you go. So just coming up to the end here, so we'll do a few rows. Let's try not to get the scissors caught up. And so when you get to this end, the idea is, I'm going to do a fairly big gap. Now the idea is that you run these stitches parallel to each other. So ideally, let's move this out of the way so we don't get distracted. So ideally I'd be going right next door to that stitch there. So it's not terribly straight, but so I'd be going in here and out and parallel to each one of those. All right, if we want to be pedantic, that's how we would do it. But you know what, life's a bit short for that, isn't it? So I'm just going to do the best I can and follow that down. And while I do that, we'll come back to see me. Hello. Because that's a little bit more interesting than watching me stitching. But of course you could, if you wanted to, run this under the machine. And you could do, I mean, you're not going to get, well, some machines, and was it Diana? Some machines do have a type of Sashko stitch where you can use invisible thread and you can get the look of a Sashko stitch, which is great. And if that works for you, then please go ahead and use that, because obviously that would save you a lot of time. It depends, I suppose, what you want to get out of the project, really, isn't it? For me, I suppose it would be the sitting and the hand stitching and all of that. I loved using my machine to make the sample, but that's because I'm always that little bit short of time, and so it was quick and easy for me to put together. Although sometimes that Sashko machine does misbehave somewhat. It's really, I don't know if you've seen my video on YouTube, but it's got a law unto itself, and sometimes it misbehaves like a spoilt child. It doesn't like, you know, with a regular sewing machine, sometimes you just come off the edge a little bit. Gosh, it really tells you who's boss when you do something like that. It completely seizes up. And you think, what? You know, and then you have to sort of re-thread it, really, although there is no needle as such to thread. It's got a barb needle that it picks the thread up with, and everything is stitched from the bobbin. So it's a great machine to see in action. It really is. So I'll just finish this row here, and then I'll talk to you about how you would do the rest of it. And perhaps what I'll do, just to make sure this is stitched down so we can actually finish it, I'll put it under the machine, which is not ideal. And to be perfectly honest, I would probably unpick it and hand stitch it. But in the interests of demonstration and speed, then I think that would be a good option. But we'll see a bit of this. So don't forget, the rule of thumb is to try and get as many stitches, a bit like quilting, to try and get as many stitches as you can on the needle. Oh, Diana says she has her machine does faux. I thought it was you, Diana. I would like to see how that looks, because obviously it has to miss a stitch to get that look. So I'm wondering, is it it can be the invisible thread that does that. Be interested to know how that works, Diana. I've never seen it work on a regular machine, so that would be fun to see, wouldn't it? Perhaps you have to do a Facebook Live now that you're queen of Facebook Lives. So for any of the new members that are listening in to this and thinking, what is she talking about? So Diana did a Facebook Live a couple of weeks ago, Diana, for our button exchange. Diana thought it would be a great idea, and I totally agreed with it, and I think a lot of the ladies did as well, because you participated. Was that we did a button exchange. And Paula, if you're listening, or if you see this later, I'm posting yours out tomorrow, and I've got a really, really nice selection of buttons. So I hope you're pleased with them. It's one of those situations where you put a few together and you think, oh, I don't want to give them away, but I have to. Otherwise, I shall get into trouble from Diana for hoarding my buttons when I shouldn't hoard them. So, oh dear, how fun. Yeah, so And I think a lot of the ladies have already exchanged buttons. And then what we're going to do for the newbies that are listening to me waffling on about absolutely nothing, is that we're all going to try and make a project, or it's 5 buttons. So we're either going to make 5 projects, unlikely in my case, or we're going to make a project with probably the one that we most love out of all of them, or maybe 2 or 3. So it depends on what the project is, I suppose. I mean, you could put a button on Suky here, couldn't you? That would look, oh gosh, wouldn't that look awesome? Especially the buttons I'm giving to Paula. Oh, perhaps I need to keep them. Oh dear me. Anyway, so in this time, I have stitched a little bit of this. So let me show you what I've done, and then I'm going to run it under the machine so it holds fast, and then I can finish it off. I'm going to probably unpick it, to be fair, because I want to get it done. Anyway, look, there we are. So you can see, look, in that short period of time, I've done these 4 rows here. So what I would do now, I would now be coming along here. The thing to do with this is to try and make it look random, because this should have been like a whole patch. This is why I said to you, you might want to stitch that first one completely and then lay the patches over the top, and then you do get that random look. So with the one that I did as my sample, you can see that those stitches go that way, and that's what I would be doing next, and put those stitches along there, and these go up and those go across, etc, etc. And that's the sort of look that you want to achieve, a bit as though each patch was laid down individually. So with this stitch now, I'd be going across here, and I suppose I could stitch right across here. I suppose that would be ideal, and then I could stitch up here like this, and then from there I could go across to here. I'd probably fill in here with a straight stitch, but then I could probably take it across here and do it like that. So it's just a case of feeling how you want to, it's like a little journey, isn't it? It's like a little maze, and decide where you want those stitches to end up. So that's really, oh hi Helen, oh poor Diana, oh this is the button exchange. Right, so it's a pity that what I should have done was done a second one and then say, look, and this is one I've done earlier, but this is real life. It's a Sunday, it is my anniversary, so there we are. Tough. So I'm just going to machine stitch these down in place so we can actually get on to the other bit, and I'm sure you know how to do that with the stuffing and all the rest, of putting the ribbons in. Don't forget you need ribbon. But just in case you don't, then we can sort of fast forward to that and we can see how that looks. So I'll just get rid of all my stuff. And John has been very busy today editing Stasia, and we've got Stasia down to just under the hour, which, considering it's nearly an hour and a half, I don't think that's too bad. So you know that you have, it's called a wraparound because it wraps around your sewing machine, and quite honestly it's an absolute godsend. I took this machine with me on my workshop, and to have the pins just there was absolutely super, and it meant that I didn't have to remember to take my pin cushion. Not, you know, I don't use pins very much, but every now and again you do, and it's just handy. And you can have it so it sits sort of like this, so just to one side, or you're going to have it sort of tucked around the corner there. You can have it across your buttons. You need to tie a bit tighter if that's the case, but I just sort of have it wedged on the corner there, and it really does work a treat. So what we'll do is we'll just, like I say, I'll cut this off. I feel a bit sad that I'm having to cut this off, but because I do like my hand stitching, but I'll perhaps make another. I've got a few days to myself for it. Well, no, I haven't. See, look, straight away I'm taking the pin out straight into Suky. She doesn't mind. I'll just put it on my long stitch as well. Not that that really makes a difference because I don't want it to be gathered, but I'll put it on a long stitch so it looks fairly decorative. Oh, that's still from embroidery mode. And obviously if you've glued these down, they're not going to ruckle up a bit, but don't forget you're dealing with patches of fabric which might wriggle. So as long as that's not gathering, I don't want my threads are caught. Oh, that's okay. I think we can get away with that. And then I'm just going to turn around on the edge and then whiz back. And this won't be the same as doing the Sashko, but it'll still give you a nice piece of fabric that you have stitched and put a lot of love in. And to be honest, you could put lace on this as well. You could embed some lace as you go, a little scrap you might have. That would be just gorgeous, wouldn't it? And talking of lace, I met up with Rosella yesterday. And it's only because she likes lace. It reminded me that I'd met up with her for a cup of coffee. That was lovely. We caught up on the gossip of the world. Lots of things happening. And yeah, and she just had a TV show on her agenda and we're chatting about that. It was lovely, really lovely to catch up. We meet up in a car park, which is always a little dubious, I have to say. But it was great fun to meet up with her. And I want you to, when I've done this, I want you to have a look at the difference it makes between the hand stitching and the machining. Because it's like, I know what I like. I know what I like. It's not this. Oh, I'm a bit wonky, guys. I'm more than wonky. Anyway, it's a means to an end. It's a means to an end. And like I say, don't forget the other technique would be to actually fold those edges under. Don't forget to add a 1/4 inch seam allowance, because I haven't. I've done this because I wanted mine to be raw edge. So I thought, right, let's keep it at that. And then you can decide if that's for you. You might be a neat freak that needs to have neatened edges, but you don't need to stay stitch. You don't need to, you don't need to catch the edges down like a stay stitch. You still just keep with your running stitch. Right, I want you to have a look at this. Let's just trim my threads so it looks fairly decent. But what it's done, it's allowed me to go to the next stage, but it's interesting to see because you can see the difference. Now, I'll put my finger on that so you can't see that. But now look how beautiful that looks. I mean, truly, let's get out a little bit. But that is such a lovely, lovely, it's textural, because it's supposed to look like a grain of rice, the stitch of a Sashko, so that's why it's just a wee bit big. But you can feel the stitches because of the quality of the thread. It looks slightly sort of quilted. It's giving the look of the fabric, it's enhancing the fabric, it's adding to the design. So if you have a look at that, now have a look at that. Now the difference is quite incredible, because that just looks like we've just machined over the top of it, which of course we have. But it doesn't look half so pretty as that. So you can see, if you keep on and you keep on doing this stitching, think about how beautiful that would be. Seriously. But we know we're doing this for speed. We know why we're doing the machining. It's just to hold all those fabrics in place. Why is it saying people are watching? Helen, it's because when you join, it would say that you were watching as well, but you haven't said anything yet, so it's fine. Oh, Mum's on there as well. Oh, you're there. Yes, excellent. So yes, I want you to consider that's beautiful, and I love it, love it, love it, love it. That is not. So in my opinion, it might be something that's perfectly fine for you. Go for it. Use some variegated thread, use a metallic thread, all of those things that we know and love, you know, use that. Right, so we need to consider now putting the two pieces together. So we've got the back and we've got the front, right sides together. Before we do that, we need to cut some ribbon. I've got some yellow here, and you really want quite a long piece. And I kind of go round my machine plus about 8 inches. So, well, yeah, I do actually. Yeah, so I'm going to cut 2 pieces quite long. It might be that you'll need that it's too long and you need to cut it back. Oops, that's gone. Or sorry, you might need to cut some away because it is too long, but rule of thumb, that pretty works. Now, if you wanted to, you could put this all the way across your pincushion, but actually I find that the usual way of cutting it in half and then attaching it to the center, and try and get it in the middle, but I mean, you know what, I'm not going to judge you if it's not quite in the middle. You'd be lucky if it does. I mean, you can find the center, can't you, by folding in half and cutting a notch. You know all about that. So I've found the center thereabouts. I've popped my ribbon right sides together. I've popped my ribbon in there, and obviously you've got to be really, really careful that you don't stitch over that. So you could kind of bunch it all up and tie it into a knot. Let's see how we get on with that. There we go, not too bad. And then you get in the other side, finding the middle, and oh, hold on, let's get this in there. I'm just going to pin that for a sec. Just going to hold that while I just tie this into a knot. It's not a tight knot because obviously we want to undo it, but it's just to get all this ribbon out of the way. And there we go, not too tight. So I'll tuck that in there, and hopefully I won't machine over the ends, and just keep your eye open. So look, I've tucked both ends in, and I've just pinned this one up here. So now I'm going to take that pin out and put those 2 layers together. And then you are going to stitch, that's it, all the way around. Yeah, all the way around. So no turning gap, ladies. If you want to do a turning gap, please do a turning gap. But in fact, let's do it from the side that we know we can see better. Yes, so if you want to do a turning gap, by all means, I'll take my stitch length down. If that's the way you want to do it, then please do a turning gap. But I particularly like this. If you think about it, that hole is going to be on the back of your pincushion. A little reinforcing stitch I did there on the corner. And let's just get that pin out of the way. There we are. But like I say, we're going to cover it up with a little patch anyway, which kind of fits in with the theme, doesn't it? Really nice. So just tuck your ribbons out the way again, and hopefully we've caught. Isn't it funny how you cut 2 pieces absolutely identical, and then when you come to stitch them together, they are no longer identical? How does that work? So I'm just going to take this pin out. I should have done it before, but hey ho. Let's try and take that out. Oh, it's this side. What a twit. There we are. I'll hold my ribbon in place. And then come back to where we started, a little reinforced stitch. I'm not sure I did on the other corners, but do that because it does help. It means you can stuff right into those corners, and especially when you snip, you're going to weaken those corners, so it's good to do a little back stitch. So just trim your corners off just like you normally would. If I can see, there we go. And there we go. Just trim that back a little bit. Okay, Sweeper Up Fairy is coming tomorrow. That'll be me with the Dyson. So we've gone all the way around. And so now what you want to do is cut your hole in the back. So be brave. And I want you to cut across the length here, not the width. Although 6 2/3, I suppose. So I'm just going to do a little snip like that. So you need some nice sharp scissors, and then make sure I'm not cutting my ribbon. And obviously you want a big enough hole. I know my ribbon is just there. You want a big enough hole to turn it through and stuff, but you don't want it too big. So that's, I'll probably make it a little bit bigger. You want it absolutely in the middle. All right. So if you go a little bit longer on one end, let's say I'm going to cut a couple of mil there, then do the same on the other end. So that hole, if you like, is right in the middle. And you want to make sure that the patch you cut is going to fit that hole. And in actual fact, my piece is the number 5 piece. So then all you're going to do is turn that through. If it rips a little bit, don't worry, because it's quite a bit of a pressure to push this through, especially if you're using all those layers of fabric. It's quite a stiff little front to it. And just push it all the way through. Oh, I found some really good, what are they called? Loop turners. No, not loop turners. Yeah, kind of loop turners today, strap turners. But they're only available in the US, so we'll have to sort of commandeer Diana to get us some. They're called blue turners? Is that right? Blue, something like that. But they were going to cost me ridiculous amounts in postage, so I didn't bother. But I saw somebody use them on TV this morning, and I thought, oh, they look good. Right, so to get a little bit more of a sharper corner, then get something a little bit, this is quite a blunt pokey tool, so get a bit of a sharper one, or the blunt end of your scissors. Please don't push too hard. You do not want that to go through. You'll be so fed up. It wouldn't take much to undo, but you know what? We get to the end and we don't want to do any more, do we? We don't unpick and do it again. And just push those corners out as gently as you can. And then we're just going to quickly put some stuffing in there. I'm going to put my iron on as well, just so we can do this last little piece. I don't think I'll have time to fray it too much. I need a frayer. Does anybody know a frayer? Not a person that's called Freya, but a person that does fraying. Did you think there's such a thing? But with something like denim, it frays quite readily. And linen as well. Oh my gosh, linen would just be so gorgeous. I have some navy blue linen. Oh, and I treasure it. I don't want to use it. It's crazy, isn't it? And of course, if you've cut this slightly on the wonk, let's say, I shouldn't worry too much. What you can do is fray more and then square it up. But in the interests of speed, we shan't be worrying about that. It's just making sure that you can get those threads. Just pick those threads. Now, if you can't seem to get the thread out like I couldn't there, just get your needle in and just pull it, and you'll soon find it'll fray nicely. There we go. It's not too bad. You just need to spend a bit of time on that. It's actually quite satisfying. Oh, come along. It's misbehaving. Anyway, let's move on. And then you just go round and round and round in circles. Don't try to fray one side all in one go. I would just keep going round and round and round, and just pick up a couple of threads from one end and just pull them, and do the best you can. I'm hurrying, but that's not too bad. We can leave it like that. But ideally you want at least 1/4 of an inch frayed around the edge of that little patch, and I'm going to show you how to actually apply that. So we've got some stuffing here. We can undo our knots now and pop this in. We've got about 6 minutes. I don't want to do any more than an hour, which is no bother. I just feel I don't want to hold you up. and get that in. And then what you want to do is just make sure it's poked into the corners. And to be honest, a pair of hemostats is good for that, because you can grab the stuffing with the hemostats and push it in. And these are readily available on Amazon. I've got a little pink pair here, which are really quite sweet. Or I've got this silver pair, which is a little bit bigger. So I suppose it depends on the project. Blue, yes, Diana, blue Turners, blue something, blue. I'll send you the link, because it was on Amazon US, I'm sure. And they're great big tubes, and you have a hook that well, they're not too big a tube, because obviously you've got to think about the strap, let's say, that you're making. It's not going to be that thick. Got fluff going everywhere now. But then you pop a hook up the tube and grab the end of your strap and then pull it through the tube. And I thought, oh, that looks good. I don't know about thickness, you know, how thick they are, I'm not sure. But I like the look of them. We have some in the UK, and I've got a couple of sorts of sets. But I just like the look of these ones, I suppose because they're a little bit different. Right, now you don't really want to overstuff. I mean, you want to sort of have enough so it's going to take at least ½ an inch of a pin. So just be aware of that. And we can leave that as that. And look, what we've got is then the makings of, and let me just show you on here. There we go. So you've got the makings of the lovely Suky. That's upside down. We could do it that way. It doesn't matter, does it? I'm being pedantic. But do you see how lovely and sharp all those edges are? It just really looks really neat when it's all machined all the way around. And on the back, of course, you've got that opening. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of fluff on here, so it doesn't look super attractive. So what you're going to do, and this is the clever bit, is that you've got a piece, get a piece of heat and bond, and iron this onto the back of your fabric. Now you want it to be, you want those edges, those frayed edges. Mine aren't frayed beautifully, but yours will be. And you're just going to take it back about £1/4 inch, because you want the edge to look so it doesn't catch the frayed edges. You don't want those glued down. You just want the fabric to be glued down. So let's just trim that up again. There we go. And so now I'm going to just go to my iron. I'm going to leave that there for a second. I'm just going to go to my iron and glue that on to the back of that. And of course I could then carry on fraying that to make that look really lovely. But this is the bit where you then stick this to the back of this, and that'll glue it all together. So give that a minute, and then you can see I haven't quite left it long enough. Let me just bring my mat in. Let's make us a little bit tidier. And like I say, denim is really funny stuff, because it will curl. It just misbehaves itself, something rotten. And that's super hot, so you want it to be cool, really. Give it a waft. And then peel it away. You can see the shiny of the glue, can't you, look? And then very carefully, I would just do it at a jaunty angle. And obviously your fraying is going to be better, guys, than mine. And you're just going to be really careful. Now I've got a motif on here, so you want to be careful that you don't iron off that motif. I'm just going to kind of go for it and hope that it's going to just take fine. And then that actually then seals your design, the back of your, and of course look, it just fluffs up nicely. In fact, I haven't sealed it there, but we can just stick the iron back on there again and just heat that down. Now, I did watch a lady the other day about applique and using heat and bond, and she said don't ever rub, always just press like that. So that's a good tip, and that's probably about right. So we'll just leave that to set, and then of course we can always give the front a little bit of an iron as well. So let's just put the iron away. So what we've now got is a lovely, really funky sort of, I think it said keypad pin cushion that can wrap around. So this can then now wrap around your sewing machine, and it's going to be really handy. The other thing is, because it's got the ribbon on there, you can attach it to your work bag so you don't lose it, because the one thing I've found, it doesn't matter how many pin cushions you have, you've never got one when you want one, and for health and safety reasons, you want to make sure that you have one to hand. So there we are. So there is Suky.